Okay, so now we are with the teacher JB Marisol Arenas Botello. And first of all, teacher, thank you to accept my to do this interview. So we're gonna start with this interview, asking you if you could tell me a bit about your background as being an English teacher, and how many years of experience do you have, um, and what level of education do you hold, and describe the schools that you have worked, or the school that you have worked now at this moment. If the school that you work is private or public school. And yeah, we're gonna start with this question.
I recently started working as an English teacher last summer on August 2023, and it is also my first job that is related to my career, but right now I have just a few months of teaching experience, and I'm currently teaching my third course at the school that I work in. And it is a private school, like an English academy, and it offers classes during the week, but I only work on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. and my first shift is with one group that it is made of teenagers between the ages of 12 and 15, and my second group is made up of children between ages of 6 years old to 8 years old, and I start my second shift with them at 12 p.m. and end it at 3 p.m.
Okay, good, great. You are a new teacher, so congrats to this work. It's so hard, I know. And yes, so let me do the first question to you. Well, second one. And we're gonna start with the abilities and use of teaching materials. So can you describe your typical English class? What kind of learning materials do you use? An example, maybe physical textbooks, digital resources like presentation, games, didactic materials, or if it is a combination of both.
And I think that there is a great accessibility to practical teaching materials such as books, printed material like worksheets, and activities for children that require them to touch, such as, for example, Play-Doh, and also English speaking board games that are great for them to practice grammar while having fun. And I mostly use physical textbooks, as all children and teens carry their books, and I also carry my book especially for teachers. But for example, teenagers, for them I do try to bring printed extra material like cheat sheets for them to practice the tenses and other explanations that the book may not have. And for children, I also bring a lot of printed worksheets that allow them to use many colors and for them to color, but I recently have also incorporated digital games to teach them the new topics that we are seeing, as they pay more attention to things that they can keep their focus on.
Okay, so you use many resources to your classes. Continue with another question. Can you tell me how often do you incorporate learning materials into your lessons? And if you can elaborate on your teaching approach.
I try to incorporate them as much as I can. If there is time left to see other topics and exercises that aren't necessarily in the books or in the workbooks, but I also personally try to get them to reinforce through games and more visual activities, as I have seen that they lean more into learning like that.
Okay, I think it's difficult because you have like two different ages of students, so you have to implement two different types of resources or two different types of engage material, because some students are like teenagers and the other ones are more younger people, so it's very how do you say that? I forgot the word, sorry. It's very different, the things that you have to implement to your classes. So yeah. Now, the fourth question. You have ever created your own teaching material? And if so, can you share why you felt the need to do this? I mean, to create your own. Don't use the materials that the school provides you.
And yes, I have created a few of my own materials, and such as presentations, exercises, and games that can be useful during class if there is enough time.
Okay, so you used to create your own material, your own games, your own presentations. That's okay because I talked with another teacher. I interviewed another teacher, and she told me something interesting. That is that sometimes that she looks for activities or games on internet. She find games or presentation, but they used to have more information than the information that she needs to their students, because not all the textbooks have the same things, the same grammar, the same topics. So it's difficult to not make your own teaching materials, because you as a teacher only know the things that you have, the information that you need to give a good class. So now, talking about the resources, can you tell me, in your experience, what the challenges, if any, have you encountered in using teaching materials in your classrooms?
There had been projectors added recently in the school, but they are not enough for all of the teachers that work in there. So I think that it is a challenge when the projector isn't available, and for example you have brought a lot of digital activities for the students, and also the projectors tend to distract young students a lot, and they stand out to touch it or want to play with it because it's a tripod projector. And when it comes to printed material, groups mostly of children, not all of them like to pay attention, or not all of them like to work with the worksheets, as they prefer to practice through more audiovisual activities.
Oh, so in your school you have technology but not enough to all the teachers. So that's the biggest problem. I think if they are not enough, I prefer to don't use that. Now, another question. In your experience, how do financial constraints within schools affect the ability and the quality of English language learning materials?
I think that dealing with financial constraints can affect the quality of the English lessons, as there are not enough resources for everyone to give the class that they will want to teach their students, and therefore there have to be more alternative ways of teaching a lesson created. And I personally think that situations such as a lack of projectors or the lack of speakers can slow down and set back other teachers from advancing with the units that they are covering, and it doesn't let them apply all of the material that they have already planned into their classes, and it also sets back the learning of the students as they fall behind all of the rest of the groups.
Now, based on your observations, have you noticed any discrepancies in the use of teaching materials between public and private school?
And yes, I do think that there are and have always been huge differences between the use and availability of the teaching materials between the public schools and the private schools. And for example, private schools usually gain their funds off from the students' price their tuition, and therefore they can keep up with including more modern resources with better quality, such as the latest textbooks and also interactive softwares. And meanwhile, public schools usually face more limitations on the implementation of more diverse material, as their budget may be cut, and therefore it creates a lack of access to more modern necessary tools, and also cuts the opportunity of teachers to be trained to use that ideal material. And ends up limiting the interactiveness and success of the lessons quality for the students.
So now let's talk about another thing, and here it comes with another question that it's can you tell me the advantages and disadvantages of using physical teaching materials in your.
The advantages are that depending on the type of physical materials, students can immerse into an activity to reinforce what they have already learned. And I mostly use them to practice writing and grammar, so I notice that it is a good way for them to realize their mistakes and that they don't notice when they speak, or that they don't usually notice when they answer questions for digital games. And it is also always good to get them to do a practical review on their writing and matching abilities without using necessarily technology. The disadvantages to using physical teaching materials can be that most of the students are used to focus more on activities that are more visually appealing, and therefore worksheets that involve writing don't entertain them as much. So not all of the students answer all of the worksheets or exercises answers, and don't always give them as much importance as they actually should. So when it comes to young children, physical teaching material should be mostly involve games and colors. If not, they are not going to focus on them.
Can you share your thoughts on the pros and cons of incorporate digital materials in the classes?
Digital materials are a huge aid to teachers as they provide more possibilities to incorporate different activities that include interactive games of any type, such as quizzes, songs, VR, visits, while they keep the students entertained and more willing to pay attention and learn the topics by relating it to having fun and with seeing visuals. And I think that the cons of incorporating them is that students get so used to digital resources that they might not want to put the same type of effort or attention whenever the online activities are not around on the classroom. So students also grow used to not working traditional ways such as writing because they are used to only focusing on activities that involve technology.
To continue with our question, can you provide examples of situations where you would prefer physical or digital materials and why?
When I'm working with children between the ages of 6 years old and 9 years old, I would absolutely prefer digital materials because that is the most effective way to get their attention and get them to enthusiastically interact with the class and the teacher and their classmates and relate colors, sounds, and objects to their learning progress, making it a lot much easier to store it in their minds for a much long time. But when it comes to older teenagers, I think that I would prefer to work with physical materials as they don't share the same excitement for digital games or activities and don't pay as much mind as the children do to them. So I think that there is also not enough involvement and the topics are much more advanced and throughout the course and much more lengthier and harder, which don't leave enough time for alternative digital activities for them.
Okay, now, in your opinion, do digital resources have the potential to completely replace physical materials in English language teaching? Please, can you explain your reasons?
I personally don't think that is ever going to happen, as physical materials have stood in ground for a long time and they will always be necessary because students need their sense of touch ever since they are children, and that involves interacting with what is present and what is in front of them in their classrooms. Also, I think that digital materials wouldn't be as successful without physical materials, so there is a great balance between them if there is enough control over how a teacher incorporates them both during a lesson.
Now we have the three final questions, and I'm going to start with the first one that is, as an experienced English teacher, what advice would you offer to college regarding the use of teaching materials in their classes?
Based on my short time as a teacher, I think that the most important advice that I could give to a colleague is to pay attention to the ways in which their classes advance much more fluently, and the dynamics in teaching materials, whether they are physical or digital, and that they use whenever the class ends up being successfully similar to like their lessons plan should become their safety net for the rest of the coming lessons. I think that finding a pattern of dynamics that fits every single group is extremely important and ensures a much more better experience for both teachers and students during a class.
So, from your perspective, how can the government be more involved in ensuring schools have access to adequate teaching materials?
I think that there should be more active conferences and plans to update all of the public classrooms, and it should become a norm and a right for all of the public schools to have access to the same material that a private school has, equally, without any type of exceptions. The gap that exists between materials that public schools count with opposite to the private schools grows bigger every year, and unless that all of the public schools are equipped, there won't be any progress.
So, we are finally in the last question, that is there anything else you would like to share about your experience with teacher materials and their role in English language learning?
I think that there is no successful teaching lessons without teaching materials. So I personally think that they are more than an aid or a help to the teachers, as they are part of the course and have always been a primal resource during classes of any kind. And especially during the learning of a foreign language, as they fulfill the role to relay the students' previous knowledge of their language or other type of knowledge to the new language that they are practicing.
Well, with this question, we finished the interview. Thank you, teacher, for your time and for being here, answer our questions, and have a really nice day.